Hello, real writers. It's Chris here, and it's been a while since I did a Tarot for Writers reading. I'm trying to get back into those, and as always, my disclaimer is that I am mostly using oracle cards. I am more interested in oracle cards than tarot, even though I have a strong pull toward really learning the tarot, and I'm working on that. I feel like oracle cards, with their variety and their different systems, lend themselves better to talking to you about writing. And right now I'm probably mostly talking about in these readings fiction and nonfiction, or creative nonfiction, anything that has sort of a prose like arc. Poetry can certainly have an arc, of course. So if any of these images here today as a poet are inspiring to you, fabulous. So I also want to try to do shorter readings because I think they'll make it easier for me to do them more frequently. And I wanted to sort of dive into some readings that would help you with your writing. And so today's reading is focusing on what inner shift does your character need to make. And what I'm using today are the Shamanic Healing Oracle cards. And they are by Michelle A. Motuzas. And I apologize if I'm butchering that. There's a special font that's being used on these cards, which is a really cool font, but it sort of makes it hard to understand what the letters are in some cases. So Motuzas, Michelle. And I have another deck that she did with her husband. That's the empathic oracle cards for those who are empaths. So I've used that before in previous readings. If you would like to look around for those, they have a similar style. These are done sort of with chalk, and they're really cool. So let's get to it. This is what is the inner shift that your character needs to make. So in any piece of writing, there are multiple layers of conflict and motivation. In the conflict, there is the internal, which is the character. There's interpersonal, their conflict with other people. And then there's external or social, which is the greater world, society, the larger community. Interpersonal is more a conflict with one or two or a few people. And the external and societal is exactly what it sounds like, the much larger picture, perhaps with, mores or, values or expectations of society, laws, etc. So something greater than that. And those are the levels, and those levels will be different for each part of those. Your story may focus more on an internal conflict, and you should have all layers of conflict in your story, but one of them will dominate. And then this can also be focusing on a character's motivation, their internal world, their mental, emotional state, all of these things combining toward action, reaction, realization, things like that. What they say and they don't say, what they do and they don't do. And so let's get started. And, 1, 2, 3, from the left to the right, pretty simple. Or you can left, right, center, decide what you want if you prefer not to use numbers. And we'll just start from the left. Okay, so this card is Masculine Energy, number 16, Masculine Energy. And that is a bright sun. So before I'm going to dip into the booklet, because it has wonderful things, but I think we all know that masculine energy is more active, and so that's probably going to be part of where this is going. A character realizing the moment of realization when they understand that they can't stay out of a conflict, they can't stay out of a situation, they can't sit back and let something go on any longer, even though they don't want to be involved. Maybe it hasn't been perceived as their fight before, but now it is. It's come to their door, it's come knocking on their door, whatever the issue is in your story. And now they have to get involved, whether they like it or not. They've been conscripted perhaps by other people they care about who need their help, or to whose aid they need to come because that person can't fight for themselves. Perhaps a child, an older person, a community that without a voice, a community without resources, whatever it is. This card is, the moment of truth where the character realizes they're going to need to act and figure out what that means for them, what they'll have to give up, what other people will think of them, what they'll have to contend with because of that, what they'll have to sacrifice, how their life is going to change, whether or not that will create conflict with their family, husband, partner, wife, whatever gender. I'm not meaning to imply anything there, whatever gender your character is. And I really hope you all are writing transgender and LGBTQIA plus, intersectional characters. We need those, and so this is the moment before the action. It's the realization, and you know what? They don't necessarily need to make peace with this, because sometimes when something happens and a character just takes action because it's the right thing to do, or it's instinctual, there's no time to make peace with it. They end up having to make peace with it later, or try to accept it later, and that can be successful or not successful. So let me read you what the card says. The sun, a powerful life force without which nothing on this earth could survive. That's what the description of this card is. The masculine energy is one of action, doing, creating, forcing. In nature, it is balanced out with feminine energy. When we find ourselves embodying this energy, we get things done. We are thinking, logical beings. If we reside here too staunchly, we do not have any room for the opposite energy to come in. Being able to effortlessly flow from one to the other, masculine to feminine, is the pinnacle of being in the flow energetically. Sometimes in love relationships, the energy turns topsy-turvy and we end up residing in an energy that doesn't meet our highest need. This is hard to break out of due to the fear of, if I don't do it, it won't get done. Realize that two people make up a relationship, and in an evolved one, the relationship itself develops its own energetic balance, a perfect combination of yin and yang, masculine and feminine. If there is a void in one area, an imbalance will develop, and as is the nature of things, unconsciously we will try to balance it out. Being aware is a perfect first step. Alternately, this card signifies a very important man in your life. Okay, so this brought up some things, and I'm glad I read this because this brought up some new things, like the idea of forcing. It may be that your character it's not that action has come knocking on their door, forcing them to take action, whatever the conflict is, in response, but they themselves can't wait for action to be taken. They're waiting for others to do something. They're waiting for someone else to speak up. And no one is doing it, and they can't wait any longer. And whether it's right or wrong, they're going to force the situation and take action. So either one of those choices, being forced to take action or forcing a situation and making that decision, are both really complex and interesting. This also, like I just read, talks about relationships and the switching of roles from masculine to feminine. And this isn't about gender. This is just about the idea of masculine energy being more active and feminine energy being more passive or receptive. So this could be an interesting idea to play with in a relationship where circumstances have changed in a relationship and the roles have changed in a relationship. And this may be that moment of realization or decision or frustration or shock for a character that is happening. Okay, so let's go on to card number 2. Again, what inner shift does your character need? Number 2. Number 2 is duality. That's so interesting, since we just talked about masculine and feminine, that now the card of duality comes up. So, and so, I think this is classically depicting good and evil, which, perhaps we should assign different colors to, but good and evil, or the idea of something being black or white without shades of gray in between, a character seeing something one way in contrast to another, or vice versa, and interpreting a situation or a person or an action or a feeling as good or bad, and nothing in between, and not being flexible, and not being open, and maybe dragging along outdated beliefs and needs and values and feelings that they've technically already moved past or no longer valid, and they're being called to change, but they're not changing. There's this, what they're still seeing, this duality. And so the shift for the character would be to shift away from this either or, one or the other type of value system or belief system or feeling, and understand that there are shades of gray in between, shades of all colors in between, and they could be in polar opposite to another character. And so now what I'm getting is that they need to see another character's perspective in order for the story to move forward, in order for them to grow as a character. They have reached a moment where they need to see the other character's perspective. Perhaps the antagonist, they need a glimpse of how the antagonist is a human being. And it's really important to make your antagonists human beings. Don't make them just pure evil. That's not going to work. An antagonist, when you look at an antagonist and who they are and their life and their needs and their conflicts, the reader should be able, and the protagonist should be able to see why that person is doing what they're doing. They don't have to agree with it, they don't have to condone it, and they can certainly absolutely fight to change it, or fight against the effects of what that person is doing, but they need to be able to see it and empathize a little bit. Even if you're writing in sci-fi or fantasy, and this character, the antagonist, is another species, another race, and coming from a completely other planet or something, and just different in every possible way, at some point your protagonist is going to need to see the other perspective, is going to need a glimpse of what it's like to walk in their shoes, if your aliens have feet. So that's what you're writing, and your aliens have feet. So let's check out what the booklet says. And I can't see the number because the cards are dark, which I love, but it makes it hard to see the numbers. I wish the numbers, that would be my one suggestion for revision for these cards, is to make the numbers and the names a little brighter so that you can see that more easily. Okay, so here's what the booklet says. Black and white, good and evil, yes and no, up and down, and want, don't want. These are all examples of dualistic thinking. What if you banned these labels from your thoughts for a day? What would happen? Would the world end? Doubtful. Would some person get away with something? No. Would you attach less emotion to a bad situation or drama? Possibly. If that happened and there was less attachment to a situation, you could keep your vibrations higher, which would enable you to deal more successfully with any situation that comes your way. Given enough time, most bad situations work out in the end. It is your choice to be drama-free or spend a lot of time and energy wasted on a situation that will turn out okay in the end. What do you choose? So a couple of things here that came up in the booklet that didn't pop up when I was giving my interpretation that I really like, is this idea of yes and no, and want, don't want. That's really wonderful, because that really brings in a lot of the very specific personal internal world of the character. Maybe they're drawn to something or someone, in whatever way. It doesn't have to be a romantic or sexual relationship, but regardless, or they want to take an action that is surprising to them, or they want to do, they, like, I don't know, they want to suddenly they disappear and take a trip out of nowhere and don't tell anyone where they're going because of something that happened. They disappear. Or they go to a bar and pick up somebody and sleep with them, and they don't know each other, and they never see each other again. And maybe this is very unusual for a character. Or they suddenly wake up one morning and they just can't do their job anymore. The values of their company are not theirs anymore, or the stress of it is too much. I think we can all understand that particular thing right now. The idea of stress and work and all of that. And they just up and quit and decide to start their own business or wander the world or whatever it is. Or they wake up and they decide, no, I don't want this person anymore. I don't want to be married anymore. I want a divorce. And it blindsides everyone in the family. Or they want to have a baby suddenly when they didn't want to. And again, for their partner, this is a shock. And it doesn't matter what it is, but this idea of yes and no, want and don't want. Going back to the first card, which, if you didn't watch the first card, was masculine energy, and I talked about being forced to take action or forcing an action, and that moment of realizing either one of those is now called for, and making peace with that, or making peace with it to the extent that the character can do the thing they're called to do, even if they're terrified and worried about what will happen and what others will think of them. If you're looking at all of these cards as one reading, which you certainly can, that feeds into this idea of yes and no, and want, don't want, especially the idea of being forced to do something you don't want to do, but the character can't resist how they feel, or can't resist this sudden shift in their thoughts or their values or their beliefs, whatever the inciting incident is for that, or whatever the change in perception is for that, or whatever somebody said or did that caused them to look at themselves in such a way that they now suddenly realize that whatever is a yes for them is now a no, or whatever they didn't want before they now want. So this is, like a reversal, and this can happen anytime in a story. There are character reversals and there are plot reversals, and character reversals can also be the antagonist, by the way. Like I said, you want to make your antagonist a human being, or whatever, they have to have qualities that the protagonist can understand and sympathize with or empathize with, even if they don't agree, and they're still going to fight them. That's three-dimensionality. You have to have that in your characters, in your story, and the arc of both your antagonist and protagonist. But it can be really interesting to have this reversal suddenly happen, where a character realizes that the thing they wanted is not what they want anymore, and the goal they were chasing isn't really the goal anymore. And they have to take a completely different action because they've missed that the obstacle or conflict they think has been at play isn't really the obstacle or conflict, and now it's really this. Or they themselves internally are realizing that they have changed, and now they want something else, and now they have to move in a different direction, and now they're understanding themselves in a different way. So throwing these little reversals in here and there, these moments of realization, make for much more interesting characters in a story and create more texture, and it's more realistic. And I lost my train of thought there. I had another thing I wanted to tell you guys about that, about reversals. But yeah, I think it was along the lines of this is the way life is, and don't throw too many in there. Switchbacks. It's the idea of switchbacks, and you can certainly pace yourself. Don't throw too many in there because you need to earn them. right? So even if something seems sudden, a reader should be able to go back and see, oh, this is what influenced them, or this is a moment where something shifted for them and contributed to this. And you want to, there's like the rule of threes in that, and I've talked about that before, I think, in other readings. But the rule of threes is where something happens 3 times, and that creates a pattern for the reader. If you want to ever create a pattern, or you want to earn an action or earn a character saying or doing or feeling something, you follow the rule of threes. You introduce it, you reinforce it, and then you act on it. It can be that you act on it 3 times as well, like, introducing is an action, reinforcing is an action, and then you have the action too. Introducing can be something comes into the character's life, their field, their perception, a person, an idea, whatever it is, the situation, and they're shocked and repulsed by it, and nope, that's not happening. And then it shows up again, and maybe they see it in a different light. And then the 3rd time, they do the thing they thought they wouldn't do, right? So just think of anything, movements through your book as the rule of threes. And, that corresponds with acts 1 and 2 and 3, if you're using 3 acts. And that creates a great pattern in a story when you can't, sometimes there's just not enough space in a story to create as much pattern as you need to for a story to feel like what's happening is earned. That's something my clients hear from me all the time. This isn't earned. When you just suddenly drop in a character to solve a problem, or drop in an action out of nowhere, and it's just simply not earned. It comes out of nowhere, and it's sort of a deus ex machina kind of thing. And that was like in Greek plays where Zeus or one of the other gods would drop in and solve a completely unsolvable knot of a problem that no one would have been able to get out of. But here comes a god to take care of it. That's cheating your reader, and it's cheating yourself. You're a writer. You don't get those shortcuts. I'm sorry, you don't. You can have kind of a deus ex machina kind of moment, sure, but you need to earn that. So in that respect, it's not really that kind of moment, but it can appear to be that way. But a reader will feel that, oh, well, I can look back through the book and see that this happened and this happened and this happened. And so this character suddenly appearing out of nowhere and doing this to change and solve the issue in whatever way that means is actually earned. So I've drifted into several different things there. I hope it's helpful. And let's move on to card number 3. I don't want these cards to fall down. They don't stay up very well here. Okay, so this is number 33, integration. And that's sort of like a weeping willow there with the setting moon over the water and a snake. So integration, and that's number 33. I don't know what this booklet is going to say about this, and these symbols are intriguing, but I'm not quite getting a message here about what this totally means. But what I am struck by, obviously, is the similarity between the willow leaves cascading down over the water, their pattern, and how the snake is patterned. So I will just say that integration integration, characters all need moments of integration in stories, including antagonists. They need moments to look at what has been happening in the story to them, and this should happen at various points in the book, and this is a pacing thing as well, where you have active chapters, lots of action, lots of things happening, and then you need to slow things down a little bit. So the reader, and this happens in books, action books too. There are moments where there might not be a chapter, there is often at least a scene where characters will assimilate information and process it and go over the facts and plot something out and decide what action to take and what will and won't work and process their emotions. And this is usually a sex scene in an action book, right? or a character goes to another wiser character, a teacher or a leader, and asks them for advice and breaks down, and I can't do this, and the leader pumps them back up again, and then they're changed. And but their characters need moments. Again, whether it's a few minutes or a scene or an entire chapter, to integrate their experiences and process the emotions and decide what to do. So if you have not yet had a moment of integration in your story where a character can do this, it's time for one now. And again, depending on your genre, that will dictate how long you spend on this. If you're writing more of a literary book or a very character-focused book, or women's fiction, which I hate calling women's fiction. There is no such thing as men's fiction, so why are we calling something women's fiction? It makes me crazy. However, there are often, these moments are usually scattered throughout a book, and then when there's a big crisis of self, or we're heading toward the climactic moment, the character will spend more time. But often in certain types of stories, these moments they appear regularly. And what's great about these moments of integration is it gives your reader a chance to catch up, to see if what they've been thinking and feeling and understanding is the same thing that the character has been thinking and feeling and understanding. It gives them a chance to see what the character wants to do, what they believe, if there's a surprise that they don't know about, that the character's thinking or feeling or understanding, or an action they're wanting to take. So it gives you want to pace it for your reader as well. This is the moment the reader catches up on facts they don't know, information they don't know, things maybe another character forces your protagonist to confront and understand about themselves or the situation, and this gives and integrate before they move to the next action and the next scene or the next chapter. So let's look at what the book says. We are a sum of all of our experiences in this and other lives. We all bring forward a wealth of knowledge, talents, and wisdom. One of the challenges is remembering who we are. We are bombarded every day in every way with messages on who we should be, what we should do, what we should wear, how we should live. These messages coming from the media, society, our family and friends, and even strangers, can drown out who we really are meant to be, who we have grown into lifetime after lifetime. Find some quiet moments in your day to identify and start a relationship with that small, strong voice inside you. Pretty soon you won't hear the other messages. Many times in your interactions with others, you hear that small voice that tells you something is not right. Your logical mind tells you to stop it. Nothing is wrong. Stop being silly, dramatic, overreacting. You may ignore your inner voice in a quest to fit in, to be loved or admired. You do not realize that your inner voice is warning you that the other person's energy is not matching their words or actions. Listen to your instincts about this situation or person. Okay, so this brings up a really interesting thought that didn't come to me, and that is this idea of listening to that small, strong voice inside you. So this could be where the character finally is listening to their inner voice, to their inner, their conscience, or that voice that we hear in our head that we often put into stories that tells us the truth, tells the character the truth, tells you the truth as a writer, right? And you ignore it, and then eventually come back around and you're like, oh yeah, I should do that. That's the right thing to do. I wish I'd listened 200 pages ago. But this is a voice that in the character's head or heart, wherever you feel that it resides, and they've been ignoring it. And now they can't ignore it anymore. And it tells them something they don't want to hear, they don't want to do, or they don't want to believe. It can be about a person, it can be about themselves, it can be about a situation. Again, this can be tied to the idea of the reversal. And this is where they have to integrate what they believed before with what they're being told now. The truth of what the voice is telling them versus the truth they've believed and followed all along. And this is often a huge moment of conflict for a character, a huge shift to make, because Our thoughts and emotions are so closely tied together that to force a thought, to follow a thought versus an emotion, or to follow the heart versus the head, or follow the head versus the heart, can be incredibly challenging for a character, and that's can create some wonderful complexity. And what's even better is if as the writer, that they're making the right decision, but it looks like the wrong decision, and the reader is screaming, "No, don't do it! No, no, no!" because they're feeling the opposite, and they've been led to believe something else and feel something else, and they're invested in a certain way, and now here's the character doing the opposite. And even if the character agrees with them that this is a really difficult choice, probably the wrong choice, and doesn't feel right about it either, that somewhere at the end of the story, it's going to pay off, and both the character and the reader are going to feel that wonderful moment of, "Oh, I get it. Okay, it was right." There's just a wonderful thrill when that happens, and then they can look back through the book and see, "Oh yeah, I didn't see it. This is totally right." Because when a character and a reader are so invested in the opposite of what it will be at the end, emotionally, it's a even bigger charge and kick, an emotional, I don't know, explosion. Or a cathartic moment even for both the reader and the character. And that's really thrilling when that happens. You really want to engage your reader's emotions, and whenever that always happens, it's pretty thrilling. So I would encourage you to consider that move if it's appropriate for your story. Okay, so this video was not at all shorter. This is usually the length I do, so that's fine. I'm going to turn all of these around, and in case you're attracted to any of these cards and you want to go back and look at the reading for them, the first card was masculine energy, the second card was duality, and the third card was integration. And again, these are the shamanic healing cards. They're really cool. I really like them. Like I said, they're created with chalk. The images are created with chalk, which I find really fascinating. So thank you so much for watching. I'm going to do another reading soon on what action should my character take. I'm trying to figure out what cards to use for that, and I hope to do that pretty soon, hopefully within the next week or so. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for coming back. If you're already a subscriber, if you're not, hit the subscribe button, and I will be doing more of these videos. I also have another channel that I'll link to in the description box, where I have about 8 months worth of journaling videos where we pull cards and we journal on the cards for 10 minutes. I also have a lot of different short videos, sometimes 2 minutes, that focus on give you something to journal on or to inspire you in your writing. So thanks everyone. Happy writing.